Hello and welcome back to the Reapers. Today we're in our Mig-19P and we're looking at using ADF in conjunction with NDB. ADF automatic direction finding, NDB non-directional beacon. So we're here, we're in the Caucasus and it is littered with NDBs, these non-directional beacons. These are radio transmitters that send out coded information on omnidirectional radio signals, and they're simply there so that aircraft can navigate to them. Hence they are strategically placed. So ADF NDB navigation is usually used to navigate to an airport and sometimes to actually get onto the glide slope and to land on a runway, or they could be for general navigation. So an example of a couple of NDB stations, and this is an NDB, this signal here with the information here. This is used for a runway approach, and these are the two chaps that we're going to use today. But out of interest, we could probably find one that's not, here we go, here's one that's just for general navigation because it's not at an airport. Now we'll look at the NDBs in a bit more detail. If we go back here, these two chaps that we're going to be using are inner and outer beacon NDBs for this runway here, which is 07 at Cobuletti. The idea is we'll use our ADF system to navigate to this chap here, the outer beacon first of all, and then this chap here, the inner beacon, at which point we're expected to have visual on the runway, assuming that we're in bad weather conditions, and then we can touch down. Each NDB transmitter has a separate frequency, so this one here is 870 kilohertz, and it has a code name. This one is Kilo Tango. This one here is 490 kilohertz, and its Morse identifier is Tango. So the first things first, I'm going to write them down because we're going to be coding them in a bit. Okay, that's that done. So the way it works is it's a passive system. So these transmitters here constantly transmit in omnidirectional with a range, essentially an infinite range. The range is set by the altitude that you're going to fly at and, you know, the shape of the Earth. So you can get up to 100 miles or more if you're flying high enough. And on the aircraft, we have just a receiver. So it's a one-way system only. And we can get the azimuth, the direction of the beacon, but we cannot get the range. We can tell, however, if it's a runway beacon, like one of these two chaps, when we are over it. So all we can get is an azimuth to each beacon and a buzzer or an indication when we are over that beacon. So for today's mission, we're going to, on the ground, we're going to program these two chaps in here. Then we're going to fly out to sea here, and then we're going to come in and navigate using these two NDBs and finally come down for a landing. The NDB receiver on the Mig-19P is the ARK, the ARK-5P. It has the ability to handle up to 2 NDB stations, and you can use it either in single station mode or in dual station mode today. So we could, for instance, use it just to go to this guy here, just on his own, this single station, or we can use it to fly to this one and then directly onto that one and then land. And we're going to use the twin station just because it's harder to use and a bit more fun. Now, disclaimer, this is not for the faint-hearted. If you're going to do this kind of stuff, you do need a bit of patience. It can be a bit frustrating getting set up, especially if you're trying to do it in the air. You can end up flying around in circles for half an hour trying to get these things set up, but that's realism. That's exactly how they would have had to have done it in 1955 with this aircraft. So that's the explanation of what ADF NDB is. Next, we're going to jump in the aircraft and we're going to show you how we actually do it. Okay, we're in the aircraft now. It's fully hot started, everything's set up and ready. First things first, floodlights on because it's a dark cockpit. Next, let's start looking at the different controls spread around the cockpit that we're going to be using. First is the radio. So the ARK-5P, the navigation system, is used in conjunction with the radio here. This is the RSIU-4V, and this is how we're actually going to listen to the radio signals from the ARK. Now, all we're interested in really is two controls here. One is that we want the volume turned up to maximum on the radio. Two is that we want it in radio compass mode. Now, note this is very, very important. Will save you a lot of frustration. At the moment, this is the early release. This is this is March 2019. This button is, and it's early release. This button is currently programmed the wrong way round. We do want it in radio compass mode, but it's flipped, it's inverted at the moment. That is actually radio compass mode at the moment. So just beware. That's a thing you need to know, and that caused me about 3 hours of just head scratching. So next is the near frequency selector. Again, another problem with the aircraft. This is, if you look at it, the near frequency band selector. In the manual, the flight manual, it says it's the far frequency manual selector. That's a big problem. The manual is wrong, of course, and this is actually the near. Now, this may change in future updates, so just be careful. But that is a possibility at the moment. I will explain it as it is set out in the cockpit at the moment, March 2019. We'll go through the use of that in a minute. Next is the homing switchover. So I mentioned we could have two stations programmed in, a far beacon and an inner beacon, and we can change between outer or far and near or outer and inner through this switch here, and we'll also use that for programming the frequencies. Next is our beacon warning. When we are heading directly over one of these beacons, we'll get an alarm and this light here. Next is our radio compass. So this needle here will point us in the direction of the NDB that we're tuned into at that moment, and we can use it in conjunction with a course line adjuster here, which we'll do to get on our runway radial. And finally is the ARK-5P itself. This is the ADF itself, and we'll go through the controls when we come to program our first station. Okay, first things first, we need to program it in the far station. That's he's going to be about, you can't see it on the map, but you can take my word for it, it's about there. FYI, if you want to know where to get the information for these stations, there is a whole booklet on it in your DCS installation folder, but if not, just click on an airbase here, and you can see that we've got runway 07 here. You've got the outer NDB is 870 kHz KT and 490 Tango there. And you always know roughly where they are because the inner NDB is always about a mile off the threshold of the runway, and the outer NDB is always about 2 miles off the end of the runway. Most of these runways in Caucasus will have either 1 or 2 NDB stations. It's only really relevant for the Caucasus. Persian Gulf tends to work, they're more modern, they tend to work in megahertz. The American map will probably be megahertz, and the Normandy map, World War II, was pre-3-digit NDB, I believe, so they would probably have had NDBs in 2 digits back then. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to check that out at some point. So it's probably really only the Caucasus we're going to be doing this in with the Mig-19, which is, of course, historically accurate. So back into the plane, we're going to program our outer beacon. So over to the ARK. Okay, to our first switch here, we can change between TLG and TLF. TLG, telegraphy, it's called, and TLF, telephony. I can never pronounce those quite right. Telegraphy is for receiving signals that are unmodulated, and telephony is for receiving signals that are modulated. Now, all or almost all of the NDB stations are transmitting with a modulated signal in Caucasus. You just have to take my word for that. So 99.9% of the time you're in TLF, and you'll never need to use TLG here. Next is the frequency band selector. We can change this, that, or that to change a band in kilohertz between that, or that. We'll come to that later. Here's a lighting switch for changing the backlighting. Here we have the volume, always work at maximum. Actually, that's going to be really annoying. Turn it down a bit. Next, we have the loop. This is an interesting thing. This is where we can press and hold to actually physically move our receiver antenna, which is back here somewhere, I guess, on the body of the aircraft, left or right. And its main method is for checking the legitimacy of your signal. Whether that's actually modelled in DCS, I'm not sure. I've never actually found a use for it, but at least in the Mig-19 that would have been a real thing. Next is our fine manual tuning lever. Excuse me. We can either use press and hold or mouse wheel scroll to actually tune the fine signals, and we'll do that in a bit. Here's the power light to show that the power is on. Obviously you'll need that on for this to work. And then we have the main modes. These are pretty consistent throughout all aircraft of the period. Off is off. Comp is automatic compass guiding. So when we're actually going to do the navigation, when we want to drive this radio needle here, we want it on comp. When we're doing the actual tuning in of the stations, we must have it on antenna mode. And if we were testing for the loop, if we wanted to use this here to test the loop, we would have it on loop there, and then we could move that left and right. So we'll leave it on antenna because that's what we're going to be doing in. So let's start tuning in our first outer station. So it was the far station, the outer station, it was 870 kilohertz and Morse code identifier KT. So we need to get the right band. So we're going to get that band there. This is going to get noisy, by the way. In fact, I'll just turn the volume down. This is going to be a noisy tutorial. Nothing I can do about that, I'm afraid. Next thing is we've got to scroll this to get to 870. This is just a slow, annoying process. And you can imagine how doing this in the air is very slow and dangerous. I'm just going to sit here and turn this wheel. So I'll skip time while I'm doing it. Now if you've noticed, if you've been paying attention, you notice every time I go over a certain frequency, then this meter, it's the signal strength meter, peaks up. And that's because I have accidentally tuned into a particular NDB. Remember, there's loads of NDBs, probably, I don't know, maybe even 100 in Caucasus, and as long as they're not behind a mountain or something, I can pick them up because, well, I'm within 100 miles or so, and that's when this signal strength meter peaks, so I'm accidentally tuning into various stations, and that's what we're going to want to do, but we need to get the right one, so let's get that down to 870. Now, if you've got a tracker IR like mine, it's kind of hard to see this, so you just have to kind of stretch and hope for the best. Let me try and get around there. So we can just about see 900, 890, 880. So somewhere around here is our 870. And this bit can be frustrating. Right, we've honed into a station. It's roughly around 870, as you can see. But it could be 870, it could be 860, it could be 865. We don't really know, so we have to check the Morse code identifier. And this is where the radio comes in. So boost up to maximum volume, and you can hear that beeping. That is our Morse code identifier, so we've got to listen to that. Then we've got to convert our Morse code identifier, our KT, if you remember it. If you remember looking in here, it's KT. We need to convert that into Morse code, so I'm going to jump into Google now, and I'm going to type in KT Morse code identifier. It should be dot dash break dash dot dash break dash for KT. Back to the cockpit. Now let's listen. That's dot dash. So that is wrong. I've tuned into the wrong station. That's why we have to do this Morse code identifier. Remember, for this to work, you have to get in this mode, and remember, at the time of making this, they are inverted. Right, so let's tune again. And this is why I said it can get a bit frustrating, especially trying to do this in the air. Try that. No, it's the wrong bloody one again. Ah, where's that station? What's this? Dot dash dot. Wrong bloody one again. Right, let's keep searching. Ooh, that's clean. Listen to how little noise there is. That means that one's close. That's a good sign. Yay! Dash dot dash break dash KT. Right, that is our station. Yes, it was annoying. Nothing I can say about that. That's just life. So that is our far beacon programmed. Just going to double check I've done everything here. Now, what we could do, if we wanted to drive this compass so it actually pointed towards the station, we'll go to comp there. And hasn't seemed to have worked unless it happens that the station... Oh, yes, it has. Sorry. Yep, it's worked. So that is the pointy end of the needle there, and it's pointing towards 251. And what we can do is actually check, and our station, our beacons are out here, remember. So we draw a line. Yep, 252, something like that. So it is working. It just looks like it's in the 12 o'clock position. Back to antenna, because we're still programming, remember. Tip. When you're in comprehensive mode like that or automatic mode like that, never try and do the tuning there. You'll burn out the motor in the ARK-5P system. So always use antenna for programming. Right, so that's the far. Now we need to program the inner beacon. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch over to near, and we're going to go to our near. Remember that I said the manual is currently inaccurate, so something to bear in mind. So this tutorial may change slightly over the coming months. We need to give the band of our near frequency, and that is 490 Morse code identifier Tango. So 490 is going to be between 310 and 640. Bosh. And here we go again, the loud bit. Okay, start scrolling. Okay, 510, 500, 490, nearly there. Ooh, and it's clean. You hear the signal's clean. It's got not much hiss on it, so it's going to be close. And we're looking for Morse code identifier. If I go into Google, T is just dash. We're looking for just dash. I think that was it. Give it one more cycle. Sounded like a dash, didn't it? Dash. That's it. That's T. So that is now our near programmed in. So we're going to switch. Obviously, we're going to start from the outer one first. So we're going to go to outer. We're going to use the item now. We're going to go to compass out of interest. What I could do now is go to loop and bend the aerial left to right to test the signal. I'm not going to do that because I'm not confident in doing it, and I don't actually think it's modeled in DCS. Correct me if I'm wrong. So we're in automatic mode now. We're tuned into the dash dot dash break dash. Now we're going to take off, head out to sea, set up our course line and actually use these. Okay, we're out now. Sorry for the noise, but I need to have it loud, otherwise we're not going to hear this radio. So, now I'm going to do it in cheat mode. I'm going to do it with clear visibility because I want to try and make a decent tutorial. Usually you would be using this to land like this if you had bad visibility. It's an old version of an ILS, if you like. So we're out here, we're near the runway. What we want to do is get to that runway, but not just get to the runway, we have to get on the radial of the runway, which is that angle there. It's no good just heading in like that towards that. We've got to run down the beacons and be on the right radial. So this is where our course line is going to come in handy. So we're going to go back to the cockpit. We're going to adjust the course lines. This knob here, mouse scroll wheel left or right, and it changes this dude here. We want to set it to the radial of our runway. The radial of our runway is, we're going to draw a line down here. Can you see it at the top? 070. Be advised that's a true heading. The compass in the MiG is going to work as standard on a magnetic heading. In the Caucasus there's a variance of 6 degrees between true and magnetic, so we've got to take 70 minus 6 equals 64. We've got to do 64 degrees to 60. Pause that so I can have a good look at it. So that's 60, that's 70, that's about a tiny bit less. That's about as close as I can get to 64. Now, what we have to do to get on that radial now is we have to maneuver ourselves so that our radio compass line here matches perfectly with our course line. That means we are A, on the radial, B, heading towards the beacon, but they have to both be heading at the 12 position here. So I've got to get that inside that and have them both on the 12 o'clock. Then we're on a radial heading towards the beacon. Sounds difficult, probably because it is kind of... Right, we're going to skip time. In fact, no, we'll just play it through. One thing about this MiG, it's incredibly fast. Very hard to slow down. I believe that is true to the real aircraft. Not much drag. When using this in real life, you wouldn't be able to look at the runway like this, but I'm going to do it just because, I can cheat. You can see as I get closer to the radial, these two lines are starting to marry. Almost married now. We're going to start turning in now. I'm going to finish our turn, hopefully, when those two marry. Can't actually see the runway anymore. Okay, and they are just about married. I've gone slightly over the edge. That's typical me, I'm afraid. Air brakes out because we're a little fast. Right, now you can see that the radial course line and the compass needle are exactly aligned. And as you can see out the front window there, I don't know if you can see it, but the runway is just in front of us. We're ever slightly off radial. I may have done a slight miscalculation from true to magnetic, or this might be slightly inaccurate. Both is probably likely. Okay, we're down to circuit speed. I'll put my gear out now. Add a bit of drag. I'm going to put my first stage flaps down now. So the next thing we're looking is for this beacon to go off. That will mean that we are going over the outer beacon. Obviously, to get that, we have to keep the radio compass here in the 12 o'clock position. And we better go down to a decent altitude as well. We're slightly misaligned there, but because we're cheating, it's not really going to matter. Neutralise the trim. So what we're going to see when we get near that beacon is that this radio compass line starts to move, and in fact it'll move, and as we go over it, it'll twiddle all the way around because it will then be behind us. So if we had a beacon that didn't have a beacon light here, an NDB that didn't have a beacon light here, that will be how you're told that you've gone over it, when that needle spins around. That needle's starting to budge now. It's going to the left, I've got to follow it left. And we're over the beacon! Switch to inner. Oh, it's the first time I've done this, so it's going to be a bit dodgy. Alright, now follow the inner. So we're following this guy here. Pretend we can't see the runway. Gear out, check. Landing flaps down. Wait for the inner beacon. That will tell us we're 1 mile off the threshold or whatever it's set to in the Caucasus. I can't remember. Too slow, too slow, too slow. Don't crash. Over the inner beacon. Okay. Cool. And now we're going to try and land this thing. At the point of doing this, I haven't done the landing tutorial yet, so I'm not actually sure how to do it, but let's just give it a go. How hard can it be, y'all? Beautiful. Parachute, please. Woo! And there you go. So as you can see, that was a lot of fuss. What's this tutorial going to be? 20 minutes or 30 minutes and something like that? But it's incredibly rewarding when you do it. Again, not for the faint-hearted, not for the casual player, but really cool when you get that right. Now, what we're going to do another time is go back and do that, but with absolutely no visibility and just, you know, doing as the 1955 MiG pilots must have done, absolutely pooing their pants. And that's it. I hope that helps. See you later.